The alien Princess Kalara drifted alone through the dark emptiness of space. Her ship, once proud and shining, now floated in pieces, sparking weakly as it slowly lost power. Smoke curled from broken panels, and the silence around her was deep and heavy. She hugged herself, shivering, not just from the cold, but from fear. Her stomach growled painfully. She hadn't eaten in what felt like days. Water was gone. Food was gone. Even hope was slipping through her fingers. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the empty ache where her family's warmth used to be. Her people had been destroyed, and the galaxy seemed determined to remind her she was utterly alone. Kalara's eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light of the stars, scanned the endless void. She could see nothing but distant sparks of light, planets too far to reach, and the cold, endless dark between. Tears gathered in her eyes, though she did not cry. Crying felt pointless here, in the quiet of space where no one could hear her pain. She reached for her pendant, a small, delicate piece of jewelry that had belonged to her mother. It was all she had left of the life she once knew. Holding it made her feel fragile, but it also reminded her that she had once been loved. That tiny comfort gave her the smallest spark of courage to keep floating, to keep surviving. Even when every thought screamed that survival was impossible, her sensors blinked faintly, picking up faint signals in the distance. At first, she thought it was just debris, a trick of the instruments. But then she noticed movement, deliberate and steady. Someone or something was coming. Kalara's heart raced. She had seen humans before in the archives, but never up close. They were unpredictable, often reckless, and sometimes dangerous. She considered hiding, letting the unknown pass by. But her body was weak, and hiding wouldn't fill her empty stomach. Hunger made her desperate. Desperation made her brave. Then she saw it clearly, a small human vessel, simple and modest, but alive and moving through the wreckage. It slowed when it noticed her drifting ship. Kalara's pulse quickened. Her mind screamed warnings. Humans were unpredictable. They could help, but they could also harm. Yet something in the way this human moved, careful and deliberate, gave her a tiny flicker of hope. She had not felt hope in a long time. She hadn't felt anyone care. And now, maybe, someone did. As the human ship approached, Kalara's strength began to falter. She tried to call for help, but her voice came out weak, rasping, barely audible. She pressed herself to the floor of the broken cabin, afraid to be seen, yet desperate to survive. The human must have sensed her distress. The small vessel hovered close, and then a hatch opened. A figure emerged, tall, human, with eyes that seemed to shine with something unfamiliar, concern. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten. He just looked at her calmly, as if he understood her fear. Kalara stared at him, feeling a strange mix of wonder and disbelief. In her world, even kings and generals often cared more for power than for life. Yet here was a human, simple and ordinary by appearance, but offering something she hadn't experienced in a long time: care. He extended a hand. She hesitated, her pride and fear wrestling with her hunger and desperation. Her stomach rumbled loudly, reminding her that she had no choice. Slowly, shakily, she reached for his hand. As soon as their fingers touched, Kalara felt something she hadn't felt in years, the first true warmth of connection. The faintest promise that maybe, just maybe, survival was possible. She let herself be guided into the human ship, leaving behind the wreckage, the silence, and the hopeless darkness. For the first time since her world had ended, she allowed herself to hope. Kalara's legs trembled as she stepped into the human ship. The air smelled different, warm, clean, and alive. Her body had grown used to the cold, metal scent of her destroyed ship, and this new smell made her dizzy. The human, Elias, guided her gently to a small seat. He moved carefully, as if afraid she might break under her own fragility. Kalara's eyes followed him, studying his face. It was ordinary, human in every way, but there was a kindness in his eyes that made her heart flutter with a strange, unfamiliar hope. Elias handed her a cup of water. Kalara stared at it as if it were a treasure. She had gone days without drinking, her throat raw and dry, her lips cracked. With trembling fingers, she lifted the cup and sipped slowly. The cool water flowed down her throat, soothing the pain and bringing life back to her body. She wanted to speak, to say thank you, but her voice barely worked. All she could do was nod, and the smallest flicker of a smile appeared on her lips. Then Elias handed her food, a piece of bread and some fruit. It seemed simple, almost nothing, but Kalara's stomach growled as soon as she saw it. She hadn't eaten anything proper since her planet's destruction. With shaking hands, she bit into the bread. The taste exploded in her mouth, simple yet so rich, so real. She closed her eyes, letting herself savor each bite. Tears threatened to fall, but this time they were not only of sorrow, they were of relief, gratitude, and wonder. She had never experienced this simple gift of human care before. As she ate, Kaylara looked around the ship. It was small, modest, not like the grand vessel she had known as a princess, but it felt safe. She could see the gentle way Elias moved, the careful attention he gave her. Every small gesture, refilling her cup, adjusting her blanket, smiling at her when she hesitated, spoke volumes. She realized that humans, despite their simple appearance, had a depth she had never seen in alien civilizations. They could be clever, yes, but also kind, generous, and selfless. This simple, ordinary human was showing her more compassion than anyone else in her life. "Who are you?" she finally whispered, her voice fragile but curious. "I'm Elias," he said gently. "And you're safe here." That's all that matters right now. Kaylara's heart ached at his words. No one had ever said she was safe, not since the attack on her planet. Safety had been a concept, distant and unreachable. Now, for the first time in her life, she felt it. She wanted to ask more, to understand why he was helping her, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply looked at him, her eyes wide with astonishment. Hours passed. Yet it felt like moments. Elias didn't rush her, didn't demand anything. He sat nearby, talking quietly about unimportant things, giving her time to rest, to eat, to regain her strength. Kaylara listened, fascinated by the simplicity of human life, the way they found comfort in small things. She realized she had been missing this kind of presence for years. Someone who offered care without expectation, love without demand, help without reason. By the time she was strong enough to sit upright, Kaylara felt a strange warmth in her chest. Hunger had faded, fear had dulled, and in its place, a fragile trust had begun to grow. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time since the destruction of her world, she allowed herself to believe that survival was possible. She had met a human, ordinary yet extraordinary, and he had given her something far more powerful than food or water: hope. Kaylara realized that maybe the galaxy was not entirely cruel. Maybe, just maybe, a human's heart could change everything. Kaylara could hardly believe what she was seeing. Elias, the human who had saved her, moved around the ship with a quiet confidence, performing small tasks that felt extraordinary to her. To him, it was ordinary: cleaning a spill, organizing supplies, checking the navigation, but to Kaylara, every gesture was full of care and purpose. He never rushed, never raised his voice. Each movement seemed to say, without words, "I am here. You are safe. You matter." He brought her more food, but this time it was not just to satisfy hunger. Elias had prepared a small platter with a variety of fruit, some baked bread, and a cup of hot liquid that smelled comforting. Kaylara had never tasted anything like it. The flavors were alive, rich, warm, unlike anything she had experienced in the sterile halls of her royal palace or the cold, ruined ships she had known. She bit into a piece of fruit, and the sweet juice flooded her senses. Tears came to her eyes, not from sadness, but from amazement. Something so simple could feel so precious. Elias noticed her reaction and smiled gently. "Do you like it?" he asked, his voice soft. Kaylara nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Words seemed too small to express the gratitude swelling in her chest. She realized that humans had a way of giving that went beyond survival. It wasn't just food or water, it was thoughtfulness, attention, the desire to comfort someone without expecting anything in return. After she had eaten, Elias offered her a blanket. It was ordinary, soft, and slightly worn, but when he wrapped it around her shoulders, Kaylara felt warmth she had not felt in months. The weight of the blanket was nothing compared to the weight of his kindness. She hugged it close, letting herself relax for the first time in weeks. Her body, exhausted and trembling, felt supported. Her heart, heavy with grief, felt lighter. She realized she had never imagined that survival could feel like this. Not just physical safety, but emotional safety, too. Kaylara watched Elias as he moved around, adjusting settings on the ship and humming quietly. She noticed small details: the careful way he handled the instruments, the way he remembered to check on her without being asked. To her, it was astonishing. In her world, even those with power often ignore the suffering of others, seeing weakness as something to exploit. Here was a human, ordinary in appearance, extraordinary in heart. Every gesture told her he cared. Every smile told her she mattered. Finally, Kaylara tried to speak, her voice trembling. "Why? Why do you help me?" she asked, tears glimmering in her eyes. Elias looked at her, and for a moment, the small lights of the ship reflected in his eyes like distant stars. "Because no one should be alone when they need help," he said simply. "Because it's the right thing to do." Those words, plain and simple, struck Kaylara deeper than any royal decree or ancient law ever could. They were truth, unpolished and pure. She felt a warmth bloom inside her chest, spreading through her like sunlight after a long, dark winter. In that moment, she realized that survival was not only about strength, it was about connection, trust, and care. Humans, she thought, had a gift that even the greatest alien empires could not match: the ability to give their hearts. Without expecting anything in return, Kaylara leaned back, wrapped in the blanket, watching Elias as he continued his small, caring tasks. She did not know what the future held, or what dangers still lurked in the endless darkness of space. But for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to feel something more than fear and grief. She allowed herself to feel hope. And in that hope, she found the courage to believe that maybe, just maybe, the universe was not entirely cruel and that humans, in their quiet, astonishing way, could change everything. Kaylara had just begun to feel safe when her ship's sensors began to blare. Red lights flashed across the small cabin, painting her face in harsh, frantic colors. She froze, gripping the blanket tighter, her heart hammering. She didn't know what was coming, only that it was fast, dangerous, and possibly deadly. Her stomach, finally quiet after the meal, twisted into knots. She had survived the destruction of her planet, but she did not know if she could survive this. Elias noticed her fear immediately. He moved swiftly but calmly, pressing buttons and checking screens with practiced hands. Kaylara, stay calm, he said firmly but gently. It's going to be okay. I've got this. His voice, steady and sure, made her tremble less, not because danger had vanished, but because she could trust him. She realized then that humans were brave in ways she had never understood, not through power or weapons, but through calmness, decisiveness, and heart. The sensors confirmed her worst fear. Pirates, ruthless and heavily armed, were heading straight for them. Kaylara's chest tightened. Memories of her people's destruction flashed through her mind: the screams, the fire, the helplessness. She wanted to run, to hide, to escape, but there was nowhere to go. Elias noticed her panic. He reached for her hand, gripping it firmly but reassuringly. You're not alone, he said. The words were simple, but to Kaylara, they were like a lifeline thrown across a stormy sea. The next moments passed in a blur of action. Elias guided the ship expertly, weaving through debris, dodging blasts from distant attackers, and calculating each movement with precision. Kaylara's eyes widened in awe. She had survived wars, battles between alien empires, and yet she had never seen someone act with such calm intelligence under pressure. He worked not for glory or fear, but for her safety. Every maneuver, every calculation, screamed of courage that was raw and human. Kaylara wanted to say something, to thank him, but words failed her. Her heart pounded as she watched the pirate vessels approaching, small but menacing silhouettes against the backdrop of distant stars. She clutched the blanket to herself and whispered prayers she hadn't said in years. She feared this would be the end, yet even in the face of danger, she could feel Elias's strength radiating like a shield around her. It was a new kind of magic, one born not from power or royalty, but from the human heart. With a few deft maneuvers, Elias managed to slip past the attackers. Kaylara could hardly believe her eyes. They were safe for now. She let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Her hands, still gripping the blanket, trembled from fear and relief. Elias looked at her, sweat on his brow, hair slightly disheveled, but eyes calm and reassuring. You see, he said quietly, you're safe? We made it. Kaylara's chest swelled with an emotion she could not name. Gratitude, awe, relief, and something deeper, something like trust flooded her. For the first time, she felt that survival was not just about escaping danger, but about having someone who would stand by you no matter what. Elias had done that. He had risked himself without hesitation, not for reward or recognition, but simply because it was right. She realized then that humans had a kind of courage that went beyond strength or technology. It was a quiet, steadfast bravery that showed itself in action and care. Kaylara had seen civilizations fall, leaders betray, and soldiers fight, but nothing compared to this simple, extraordinary courage. As the danger faded into the distance, she looked at Elias and smiled faintly through her tears. She had found something she thought was lost forever: hope, trust, and the reminder that even in the darkest shadows of the galaxy, light could still shine through. The stars outside glimmered softly as Kaylara sat wrapped in the blanket Elias had given her. Her body, still recovering from hunger and fear, felt lighter now. She traced the pendant around her neck with trembling fingers, remembering her lost world, her family, and the endless darkness she had endured. Yet, sitting here, she realized something remarkable: she was not alone. For the first time since her planet had been destroyed, she felt safe in the presence of another being. Elias moved quietly around the ship, checking instruments, adjusting settings, but always keeping an eye on her. He did not speak loudly or demand attention. He gave her space, yet made it clear she could trust him completely. Kaylara watched him with a mixture of fascination and admiration. Humans were strange creatures, fragile, small in appearance, yet capable of astonishing patience and care. The way he moved, the way he observed her needs without being asked, was unlike anything she had ever experienced. She felt a warmth she had forgotten existed, a warmth that was not just physical, but emotional. "Kaylara," Elias said softly, pausing near her, "you can rest now. We have time. No one can hurt you here." His words were simple, but they carried a weight she could feel deep in her chest. She wanted to respond, to say something meaningful, but her throat was dry, and words felt too heavy. Instead, she looked at him, letting her wide, alien eyes convey what she could not speak. Elias understood without question, offering a reassuring smile. Gradually, Kaylara began to open up. She told him fragments of her story, not the full tale. Not yet, but enough to let him glimpse the enormity of her loss. She spoke of her planet, its beauty, the love of her parents, and the sudden chaos that had shattered her world. As she spoke, tears streamed down her cheeks, but she no longer felt weak. She felt relief. For the first time in what felt like forever, she could release some of the burden she had carried alone. Elias listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. When she fell silent, exhausted, he simply reached out, placing a comforting hand near hers. Kaylara hesitated for a moment, then slowly allowed her fingers to brush against his. The touch was gentle, warm, and steady. It was a connection unlike anything she had known, one born not of obligation or duty, but of choice and care. Her heart, long guarded, trembled with trust. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice small and shaky. "For everything." Elias shook his head lightly, smiling. "No need to thank me," he said. "You don't have to be alone. That's what matters." The simple truth of his words struck her deeply. No one had ever offered her such honesty and kindness without expectation. She realized then that humans had a gift beyond technology or strength. Their hearts could reach across darkness, across pain and fear, and bring light where none seemed possible. Kaylara felt tears well again, but this time they were not only sorrowful, they were hopeful, bright, and full of gratitude. Hours passed, and the two of them sat together in quiet companionship. Kaylara, wrapped in the blanket, finally allowed herself to relax completely. Her body rested, her mind eased, and her heart began to heal. She realized that survival was more than just staying alive, it was finding someone to care, someone to trust, someone to remind you that even in the vast, cruel galaxy, connection could exist. For the first time in a long while, Kaylara allowed herself to dream. She imagined a future where she was not alone, where danger did not define her every moment, and where kindness could be a shield as strong as any weapon. And in that quiet, soft moment, she understood something profound. A human's heart could save more than a life. It could save a soul. Kaylara had grown stronger in the days since Elias had rescued her. Her body had begun to heal, and the hunger that had once gnawed at her constantly was replaced with a gentle contentment. But it was not only food and warmth that nourished her, it was the human's presence, his kindness, and the simple gifts he offered that made her feel alive in ways she had thought impossible. Elias shared stories of his world, telling her about vast oceans, rolling green hills, and cities filled with laughter and light. He spoke of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, of humans building hope even in impossible situations. Kaylara listened, fascinated. She had known power in politics, empires and war, but she had never heard stories like these. They were small, yet brilliant. They were proof that life could be beautiful, even after devastation. He also taught her simple tasks: how to grow food in small containers aboard the ship, how to mend equipment, and how to navigate using the stars. To Kaylara, these were not trivial lessons. They were lessons in survival, trust, and patience. She realized that humans valued not just survival, but the way one lived, the way one cared for others. Every action, no matter how small, carried meaning. She watched Elias carefully, learning not only how to act but how to feel. One evening, as the ship drifted past a shimmering nebula, Elias handed her a small notebook. Its cover was worn, but the pages were clean and empty. "Write your story," he said. "Write your dreams, your memories, everything you want to remember. Don't let the darkness take them from you." Kaylara hesitated. She had never been encouraged to record her own thoughts. Royal duties had always been about rules, not feelings. But now, with a human's gentle insistence, she felt a strange courage. Taking the notebook, she ran her fingers over the blank pages, imagining filling them with her experiences, her hopes, her losses, and her dreams. Kaylara began to write slowly, at first hesitant, then with more confidence. Words flowed from her like a stream she had dammed for too long. She wrote of her planet's beauty, of her family, and of the terrors she had endured. But she also wrote of Elias's care, his bravery, his endless patience. She realized that humans had a unique power. They could heal with presence, teach with simplicity, and inspire hope with gestures that seemed ordinary but were extraordinary in their effect. During this time, Kaylara found herself laughing again, something she hadn't done in months. She laughed at small mistakes she made while learning, at Elias' jokes, at the strange quirks of human life. The sound was foreign to her ears, yet it warmed her heart. She had thought laughter belonged to happier times, times now lost forever. But Elias reminded her that joy could exist even after tragedy. It could exist here, in the smallest corners of life. As days turned into nights, Kaylara felt a transformation within herself. Hunger had been replaced with satisfaction, fear with trust, and despair with hope. She realized that Elias had given her more than food, shelter, or protection. He had given her a vision of life itself, alive, vibrant, and meaningful. She understood, finally, that survival was not enough. To truly live, she needed connection, guidance, and the courage to embrace the unknown. Looking at him one quiet evening, Kaylara whispered, "You've given me more than life. You've given me hope." Elias smiled, brushing his hand across her shoulder in comfort. "You've always had it," he said softly. "I just helped you see it." Kaylara felt her chest swell with gratitude, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that she could face the future with strength, courage, and perhaps even joy. Kaylara stood at the observation window of the ship, staring at a new planet glowing softly in the distance. Its surface shimmered with colors she had never seen before, and the light reflected in her alien eyes like hope itself. Her journey had been long and terrifying, filled with loss, hunger, and fear, but now she felt something she had not felt in what seemed like a lifetime possibility. For the first time, she could imagine a future that was not only about survival, but about living. Elias stood quietly behind her, watching her watch the world. He said nothing, but his presence was comforting. Kaylara did not need words. She felt his steady confidence, his unwavering care, and she realized how much she had relied on him, not just for food, safety, or guidance, but for the courage to hope again. He had shown her that even in the darkest places, human hearts could shine like stars, guiding those who were lost. Turning to him, Kaylara smiled, a genuine, bright smile that reached her eyes. "I never thought I could feel this safe," she said softly. "Or this alive." Elias nodded, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "You've been strong all along," he said. "I just reminded you that you don't have to be alone." She felt a warmth bloom in her chest, a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and something deeper: trust, connection, and perhaps even friendship that could become more. Kaylara looked down at her hands, which still held the pendant from her lost home. The weight of grief had not disappeared, but it no longer crushed her. She had been broken, starving, and terrified. Yet she had been given a gift more precious than life itself: the chance to feel hope again, to believe in kindness, and to know that the universe could offer something good. Humans, she realized, were capable of miracles, not the flashy kind made with technology or magic, but the quiet, lasting kind born from care, courage, and heart. The new planet drew closer. Its atmosphere glowed like liquid amber, and rivers reflected the starlight above. Kaylara imagined walking on its surface, planting seeds of life, learning, and growth. She could see a place where she could heal fully, where her story could continue beyond tragedy. She turned to Elias again, her eyes bright and full of emotion. "Thank you," she whispered, voice steady this time, "for saving me, for everything. I don't think I would be here without you." Elias smiled, a small, humble gesture, but it carried more meaning than words could ever express. "No one should face the stars alone," he replied. "Not you, not anyone." Kaylara felt tears gather, but this time they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of relief, of hope, of the joy of knowing that someone had truly cared for her. She realized that she had survived not just because of her own strength, but because someone else had chosen to give freely without expectation, without judgment, without hesitation. As the ship descended toward the planet, Kaylara felt a renewed sense of purpose. She would not just survive, she would live. She would build, learn, and embrace the life she had been given. And she would remember Elias not just as the human who saved her life, but as the one who taught her the most valuable lesson of all: that hearts could heal, hope could flourish, and even the smallest gestures of kindness could change a life forever. Kaylara breathed deeply, feeling the wind of a new world whisper across her face as the ship touched down. She stepped forward with confidence, ready to face the unknown, ready to embrace the life ahead. For the first time in years, she felt complete, not just because she had survived, but because she had discovered something eternal: the power of human kindness, courage, and love. And in that discovery, Kaylara knew that she was no longer alone.